The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with our co-host here, former Oshkosh City Councilwoman and Mayor Melanie Bleckel. We are taping this on the 8th of April. The election was a couple of days ago. Some interesting and some disappointing results, but some good results as well. Joining us tonight to talk about a couple of rather important things would be councilmen. I say councilmen because there are two of them. Paul Esslinger, recently re-elected to a third term, and Councilman Brian Poeschl. So thank you both for being here this evening, and Paul, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel?
I feel great. You know, I was watching results, and you know, at first it was pretty nip and tuck, and then about midway through, I was pretty convinced that I was going to make it, and then you know, at the end, seeing 8,000 votes was just, I mean, my jaw was just about on the ground. I couldn't believe it, and thanks to all the people that that voted for me. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, maybe we need referendums every spring.
Yeah, I guess so. Right.
It's the only way we can get them out of the house.
Not one like this, though. The reason that we asked you guys on was because there have been a few things that have come up lately, and I'm sure most of you at home are well aware of the problems with the CAN board. And for those of you who don't know what CAN stands for, it's Confront Addictions Now. This is a board that has a City of Oshkosh charter, made an awful lot of news toward the end of the campaign season because they have apparently been meeting illegally. They made a $500 donation to Breathe Free Oshkosh, which Breathe Free Oshkosh accepted illegally, and then gave the money back when they were kind of caught on the, well, I won't even go there. They were caught, let's just say that. And so they had to give the money back. But the thing is, the CAN board has been holding a lot of illegal meetings, not just, you know, with respect to Breathe Free Oshkosh and that whole thing. They've been having meetings that aren't properly noticed. They've been conducting business at meetings when they don't have a quorum. And the reason that Brian is here is because he is the council representative on the CAN board. Now, you and I, Brian, we talked last week.
Yes.
And I called you to let you know that I had filed a request with the district attorney's office on Friday, the 2nd of April, to investigate the CAN board and its activities. As of this taping, I've not heard anything from our district attorney, Bill Lennon, but I'm sure that with this being kind of a short week because of Good Friday tomorrow and so forth, you know, I'm sure he'll get to it, and I will be calling him. But I called you last Friday night to give you heads up that this, in fact, is what I had done. And we had a rather interesting conversation because as a result of my calling you, I found out that you have not been to a single CAN board meeting, and you've been on this board for a year. And why don't you tell the audience why you've not been to a CAN board meeting in a year?
Well, I'd be glad to. As far as back a year ago when I was lucky enough to be elected to the city council, we all get now put on a couple of boards that serve the city, and one of them was the Transit Advisory Board, which I go, those meetings I've been to, besides ones that have been canceled, but otherwise been to those. And the other one is the CAN board, and when I was put on those two, I had asked the mayor, Mr. Hintz, at that time, as far as the CAN board, I said, I pretty much know nothing about what they do, and I said, you know, what can you tell me about it? And his answers at that time were, he said, well, you really don't have to worry too much about going to the meetings that they have. And I was like, well, why? And he's just like, they have a big board, and it's just not always as far as like stuff that as far as is that big of a deal. And So I didn't take much to heart, and that's why I say up to this point, I feel bad in a way now that this has happened, because I could have maybe directed them in the right way. I've always read their minutes and seen what they've done, whatever, and I just understood that it was on the clear. Being a new person and not having this happen, I can say that I've learned a ton in the first year. Now something like this has really learned a lot in the past 3 weeks, because I feel bad on one side of not being there, and as far as that goes. And the other part was, I didn't think I was that important, because for the first 3 months meetings, I can tell you that my letter of invitation to come to the meeting came a day in my mail after the meeting was happened.
Did you say the first 3 months or the first 3 meetings?
The first 3 that I was invited to.
They meet once a month, so
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
And those came a day after. So then I got on the horn and called City Hall, and they got the right address to Mr. Kuchera, who does send letters out to invite you to the meetings. And I always got them, but as far as being on Thursday nights at 7 p.m., they don't always fit in the schedule, and as far as of what I knew, because it didn't have the exact dates all the time. And I always read the minutes, what was going on, and as far as from the beginning, didn't think it was that big a concern from what I was told to begin with. That, I mean, I will go and attend them now with what's happened, because I want to get them on the up and up, depending what does happen with your letter you did file, as far as depending on the charter and everything else. But,
Well,
I mean, I feel bad on one side, and the other is like, well, I just wish I had known about this, because I just read the things that happened and have learned a lot in the last month about what's right and what's wrong in some of these things that go on.
So that's what Mayor Stephen Hintz, outgoing mayor, by the time this show airs, he will be a former mayor. That's what former Mayor Stephen Hintz told you to do, is that you didn't need to bother going because it just wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that
Right.
important.
I mean,
Was,
to me, it
was there
didn't-
any other reason? Did it have anything, do you think, to do with the Breathe Free Oshkosh thing and what they were bringing forward, and that a lot of their CAN board members are also members of Breathe Free Oshkosh? Or do you think that that's not an issue?
I didn't really hold it as an issue as far as
Okay.
at that time. I just took it to understand that their meetings were not that big a deal. They were involved mainly with their fundraising through the Festival of Trees that they do every year, and try to do programs that help people, to the addiction of either the alcohol or tobacco or whatever it is for kids these days. And I just always read this stuff and kept up with it, but
Well,
just
if that's what he said, then I guess that's even more support for the letter that I sent to that Melanie and I both sent to you guys. Again, for the audience's edification, not only did I file a request for an investigation with the DA's office, but Melanie and I, as active and concerned citizens and taxpayers in the city of Oshkosh, we drafted a letter the weekend prior to this show being taped. It would have been drafted over the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of April, and we emailed that to the city councilman and to Mayor Richard Wolink, as well as the rest of the media, letting them know that we are asking that the charter for the CAN board be stripped, the city charter be taken away from them. And so it sounds like if the former mayor doesn't think it's that significant of a thing, then we should have no problem taking away their charter.
One of the things that I wanted to say to Brian is, while you're feeling very badly now, I need to fess up as well, because I was also a member that should have been going to CAN board meetings. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, Mr. Hintz, the mayor at that time, this was something that was prevalent and kind of passed down, that the CAN board really didn't do any quote-unquote city initiatives. They never brought any resolutions forward. They never brought any ordinance changes forward. It was just kind of, this group of people who wanted to deal with alcohol and some other addiction kind of stuff. And it was, and I think there was some confusion as to why this was a city charter to begin with, because there was not a lot of initiatives. And if we're all being very honest, nobody wanted to sit on the board. I mean,
and that was kind of what I took. And like I say, if I'd have took it differently, I'd have been to a couple meetings, but I can tell you point blank, like I say, I have not been to one since I've been elected.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you, as long as we're all fessing up. I mean, I was a former mayor, I was a former council member, I was also supposed to be a former CAN board member. And when you first get on the council, it's kind of a pecking order. You work your way up through the appointments on what boards that you sit on. And I'll be perfectly honest, it was kind of a running joke who's going to get the CAN board one, because they really didn't do anything that was relevant to city business or initiatives for the city. And it was kind of viewed as a waste of council members' time. Now, if they have been meeting illegally, and God only knows how long that's been going on, it could date back to when I was supposed to be at board meetings. You know, I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, obviously, when you have members like Don Kuchera, who was a city mayor, a long-time city council member, who is within the minutes, which is, I guess, this is what boggles my mind. It's one thing to break the law and at least try to be smart about it. You know what I'm saying?
Not that we're condoning that.
No, but I mean, at least, you know, the Joe Paulus kind of breaking the law. I mean, he had like 14 years of, you know, dodging those bullets, and he finally caught up with them. We have a can board that puts in their minutes that they don't have a quorum, but we're going to conduct business anyway. Okay. We have them putting in the minutes that Don Kuchera, who knows very well what the open meetings laws are all about, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, they have not changed in years, telling the members that are there, not in the quorum, that he's going to give a ringy-dingy to the folks that couldn't happen to make it to the meeting.
I mean, and that's plus when you say Mr. Kuchera, as far as him, along with Miss Prop, who in all my years, and even the years you were on a city council and everything, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking I had the utmost respect in everything they did, because they have been city councilors, they have been mayors, and I'm like, my respect for them has kind of dropped a lot, because I'm going,
As well
what
it
did you
should.
what did you guys do that, as far as we're city councilmen and mayors, and I'm just respecting that what you're doing on this can board is working out right, and all of a sudden, boom, the bottom falls out.
Well,
Right. Well,
there's one other thing, Melanie, that you forgot to mention is the chairperson for the can board is Chuck
Absolutely.
Dinkel,
We're gonna
who is
get
a
to him in a
former
second.
town
Yeah.
town board person who's disgusted with us.
Yeah, we're going to get to him in a
Twilight
second. I
Zone.
just want to make the distinction, because you brought up Kathy Prop's name. She is, Kathleen Prop is not a member of the CAN board, but she is, I don't know what her title is. Everyone in Breathe Free Oshkosh seems to be a coordinator. I don't know what they're coordinating, but they're all coordinators. So she is a member of Breathe Free Oshkosh, not the CAN board. However, the lines of demarcation between the two are very, very muddy and murky.
Well, and I took her to be a board member, as in all the agenda, it always said Breathe Free and had her name to speak about it. So I took her to be a CAN board member.
Oh no, she's not. She's
Okay,
not.
well, that
I've got
answers
the
that.
list of CAN board members here, and her name's not on it.
But there is quite a few of prestigious individuals who are on the can board.
Yes, well, let's run down the list. We've got some of these people I don't know. Michael Bird, Bruce Black, Sheriff Mike Brooks, Margaret Chester, Joe Sismosky, Jerry, I don't know if it's Demel, Chuck Dinkel, Walt Demney, Dave Erickson, Police Chief Dave Erickson, Kim Harwell, this is a fax copy, so it's a little blurry, I apologize. Liz Jansen, Don Kuchera, Don Lux, Daniel O. Lynch, Ruth McGinley, Liz Moore, Christine Olson, Nancy Pienczykowski. Well, I don't know. And Councilman Brian Poeschl. So,
well, I guess my point, just to quickly go back, because I know Cheryl's got a lot of material to cover. The irritation and the outrage that I have here, and I say this with a smile, because it's if you don't try to keep this in perspective, you'd be ripping what's left of your hair out. That, you know, Don Kuchera is saying, and Don Lux is taking these minutes, that I'm going to call the people, I'm going to give them a ring on the telephone, and make sure that I can get consensus to get money from the CAN board to give to Breathe Free, even though we don't have a quorum, and he knows full well that we as elected people or people on boards cannot create that chain of events without an open forum. It's
Unless
illegal.
they got enough calls, phone votes, because I never got called.
Well, and it's just, and it's interesting, because in the minutes that are the thing that kind of blew the lid off of CAN, that was a funny, blew the lid off of all of this is, the number one, the minutes were wrongly noticed. The date of the minutes are wrong. But Don Kuchera, the very next day, went to City Hall, went to the city administration, presents a voucher that says smoke free Oshkosh.
Or smoke-free something or other.
It said
Yeah.
smoke-free Oshkosh. I think it's right on there, isn't it? And
Not in these minutes, no.
instead of breathe-free, which I'm sorry, Don's been an active part of breathe-free Oshkosh. It's not like all of a sudden in one day you forget the name. And presents it to the city cuts the check in one day. I mean, this is bad. I mean, and you wonder why people suspect government, suspect boards, think that the fix is in. You know, we tease people that have these kind of conspiracy theories, but it's in black and white. I mean, how do we revive the faith of our voters and our constituents when our own city boards are smarming around in the muck and the mire? They're worried about smoke. I'm worried about mud being shoved in orifices so I can't breathe.
Well, and I did look it up here. The according to the Oshkosh Northwestern, it just simply said smoke-free. And Warren Kraft has a quote in here. He said, you know, if it was verified, somebody in the accounting office would have caught it and asked, what does smoke-free mean? So it just simply said smoke-free. It didn't say smoke-free Oshkosh, because somebody probably would have caught that.
But the point
It's still
is that
smarmy. It was. I feel
deliberate.
it was deliberate. I feel
you
it
know
was,
what
yes.
the money was going to be allocated for. Put on the voucher that it's for breathe-free. I mean, you ended up having to turn around and give the money back anyway.
Take it back in this case, yeah.
So what's the point of all this subterfuge?
Well, I think, Melanie, the whole thing about this anti-smoking thing for the restaurants, that whole campaign, at best, was disappointing, and at worst was criminal, was illegal. And I think, you know, if you're having illegal meetings, one could argue that it was criminal. The tactics used there, you know, they had on the flyers that they sent out, do you want more smoking, or something similar to that. Margie Davy, one of their spokespeople, said that was going to...
Coordinator. Well, she's a spokesperson. I don't care what she says.
Right,
She's a
coordinator
spokesperson.
/ spokesperson, whatever, said that was going to be removed.
Right.
And just days before the election, they sent another one out that said the same thing. So they lied about that. They're holding illegal meetings, what appears to be illegal meetings. They're trying to, you know, give $500 where they're not supposed to. You have an ex-mayor doing this. You have a town board chairman who then, this is the best part, in my opinion, who says he's disgusted with the city fathers.
Yeah, let's talk
What?
about Chuck Dinkle. He's disgusted with the city and the city fathers.
Right.
And I had a conversation with him, as you know, but we'll talk about it here so that the whole audience is aware. I had a conversation with Chuck Dinkle the day that his little disgusting piece, you know, showed up in the Northwestern. And I spoke with him. I invited him on the show, by the way, folks. Asked him to come on the show and talk about the can issue. He said no. He declined because he knows our tack. I wasn't sure what tack was, you know. I mean, does he mean the kind of tack where we ask questions and someone actually has to answer? Is that the tack he means, rather than sitting here being spoon-fed their crap? If that's our tack, well then guilty as charged. We're both guilty, so, you know, handcuff us and haul us away. But, you know, we have been very fair to all the Breathe Free Oshkosh people. We've invited them on the show. They were on the show twice. We gave Margie Davy an opportunity to appear on the show. She was kind of a less than gracious woman about the invitation. And we'll talk about her because, as you know, I had a conversation with her too about that very thing that you brought up. But as far as the Chuck Dinkle thing goes, he didn't want to come on the show, so I took off my talk show host cap and I put on my taxpayer, citizen, property owner cap, and I asked him why he was disgusted with our city. And he's disgusted because this is how ludicrous this man's judgment is. It is so cloudy, and it's not cloudy from all the smoke he's been breathing. It's just cloudy because he's got some judgment problems when it comes to what is and isn't a political issue. He said that he was upset with the city because, you know, the restaurateurs put pressure on the city. They brought pressure to bear, and therefore the money had to be given back. And he was upset with the city because of the fact that this was a public health issue, not a political issue. And my response was, not a political issue. My God, there's a referendum.
It's on a referendum.
Exactly. There's a referendum on next Tuesday's ballot.
Yeah.
you know, like 4 or 5 days away. It is political. And you guys in Breathe Free Oshkosh, because Chuck Dinkle is a member of Breathe Free Oshkosh, and he admitted that, and he told me that a lot of the CAN board members are members of Breathe Free Oshkosh. That's why the lines of separation here, demarcation, are very, very muddy. But he told me that, or rather I told him, you know, you guys in Breathe Free Oshkosh made it political when you brought it to the city council last summer. Mm-hmm. You made it further a political issue when you went to binding legislation, binding referendum. He just couldn't see it. He still argued that it was a public health issue and not a political one.
Well, I don't know how you're trying to reason with people that are unreasonable.
No,
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, he eventually got mad at me and hung up because he
right.
could not give me any logical reason. The common sense was just not there.
Of course.
He got caught, and I won't say with what in where because that's your line that you use, but he got caught, and you know. And he couldn't talk his way out of it. He didn't know how to talk his way out of it. And that's why he's not sitting here tonight answering these questions. He doesn't have any reasonable or logical answers.
That's exactly right. You know, and another thing that happened during this whole campaign is I received phone calls at home from people that were asking me what to do about harassing phone calls. And I said, well, it's really not a function of the city council. I said, if I was you, I would call the police department. And I asked, you know, what were they talking about? And they said that we were getting these phone calls from these Breathe Free or some telemarketing deal asking about their smoking preference and other, you know, goofy questions, and they're calling 4 and 5 times a night. And if you didn't answer correctly the way they wanted, they hounded you. And another thing that we have to take into consideration, remember when they had their St. Norbert study done? Mm-hmm. Their statistically correct study, you know, within 3 or 4 points or something, and all the political gurus and statistical professors got on this, and this is correct.
And thank God we have those people.
Oh yes, you know? Thank God, yeah. And I feel sorry for some of the folks that are being taught up there if they had anything to do with this, because if you remember in that study, it was a proven fact that 75 to 80% of the residents of the city of Oshkosh wanted the smoking ban, and I think we got a little bit different from that. So whenever you hear someone say they have a statistically correct analysis, run as fast as you can in the opposite direction.
Well,
there's one other piece of this, and I think that it was kind of like the fall of the empire when it started, and it started way back with Mark Harris. When Mark Harris originally brought this proposal to the city council to be voted on the council dais, when he brought this ordinance change forward, he had led the restaurateurs to believe that they would have a part in the discussion, a part in the forming of the ordinance and the discussions, and that this was going to be postponed until after election time so that there wasn't all this heated political kind of mumbo-jumbo going on, that they could have a rational discussion about this and come to a good compromise. That didn't happen. Mark Harris did not live up to what he said to the restaurateurs. And in there, the decline started. It started with a council member who did not, purposefully misled, moved up the agenda because he knew his Breathe Free people that he supports didn't want those discussions to occur. There was no compromise to be had here. They didn't want it, and they were very candid about that. But where I want to go with this, Brian, you were supportive of the Breathe Free initiative. As a matter of fact, you made the initiative even tougher than it was originally.
Yes, I did.
Knowing what you know now, and hindsight is always 20/20, and I'm just asking you this because, you know, we all would like the ability to know then what we know, now. Reflecting back, if you had the kind of information you saw, if you knew these people to be who they've shown themselves to be now, would you have moved in the same direction? Would you still feel the way you did when you originally supported this?
I can say not now, no. As far as when I talk to people now, which some of the people Tuesday with the election going on, that had said they voted for me and kind of lost a little bit when I did vote that way. I explained to them as far as that was the first big issue I had on the council, and I can say as far as now, instead of being a loser once and being over with, I'm actually a loser twice now. But I mean, as far and back when my statement is back when I made it tougher than what it started out to be. As I explained to one person the other night, is I feel for the restaurateurs as far as, and the reason I went to the 70-30 was because all a lot of your taverns in town have the same restaurant license, and I feel that that's knowing people from both sides. What I was trying to do at that time, but didn't come across that way, was have the bars be bars and serve your alcohol, compared to not even two places I'll name, but are probably two of the biggest places people go for a sandwich at lunchtime, and take that out of the bars so the restaurants can have business for those noon hours and sandwiches and stuff, and make it that way was where the 70-30 originally came from.
Yeah.
So you were trying to help the
I
restaurants.
was trying to help the restaurants to make the taverns be taverns and serve your beer and liquor and alcohol and everything you do, and
Just no food.
And just no food. That then the people that had 70% food would have the restaurant license and would be serving that food, and the other ones would not because it'd be a total tavern, and that went the wrong way. And like I say, that was the first big issue I had, and I lost at that time. I've told Paul I was a loser. In my mind, it was over with. I said it all along. Since then, and even as the Levines that were on your show a week or two ago mentioned my name on that show, that as far as I been to Phil's place many times with the Thursday night where you don't have to smoke and everything, and enjoyed it. And I told them back then, I said, you know, for all the people that called me back in June, July, and August, when I get home on a 90-degree day, and I got 90 voicemails on my voicemail to listen to for the deal, and I said, I told those people right out, I said, I'm supporting you on this issue from what you've told me, prove it to me. And that's when Phil had said where their business went up 25%, which didn't mean, it was still single-digit numbers as far as the restaurant part meant, that his door should have been knocking off the wall and people standing 3-4 deep at the bar waiting to be seated, and they didn't prove that to me. The other part that changed my mind was when I was on vacation and came home and watched the council meeting. That was the night that he got up and spoke, where they had had their discussions with the Breathe Free people and said they would go with the 50-50 like Fond du Lac and Nina.
Right.
And Breathe Free said, no way, it's got to be this way.
Right.
That's changed my mind also, and that's why I've told Phil that as far as I now can say that I voted the other night for the restaurants to make this happen, and that's why I say I'm a loser twice now.
Well, you may not end up losing because as of the day of this taping, the Levines are and the other restaurant owners are exploring their options, and there may be some surprises coming down the pike here.
There's one other tactic. I'm sorry, Cheryl.
No,
but
that's all right.
There's one thing that
I do want to get back to Can, though.
Right. That one thing I did want to mention that really upset me. A few days before the election, we got a phone call at home. And my wife and I answered the phone at the same time in different rooms. And I heard someone ask for Jackie, my wife's name, so I hung up the phone right away. But we were just in the opposite room, so I could kind of hear. And my wife explained to me the conversation. The woman said, Jackie, we have you, and this is how she started out the conversation. Jackie, we have you down in support of smoke-free restaurants. And my wife said, now my wife, God bless her, stays as far away from political stuff as you can possibly. She would not sign anything, so no one had her down for anything, okay? So this woman says, we have you down for in being in favor of smoke-free restaurants. And my wife said, no, that's not true. And this woman said, you're not in favor of smoke-free restaurants? How can that be? Like, you idiot, you know, how can you be so stupid? And my wife said, well, I think that restaurant owners should have the choice of having that or not. And this woman went into a 5-minute speech, you know, went into the whole telemarketing deal. And when my wife said, well, I'm sorry, I'm not changing my mind, the woman said, well, what can I do to change your mind? It's that thing again.
Yeah.
So when they called people, they didn't quite phrase it correctly. They didn't say, do you think the government should get involved in smoke-free restaurants? I'm in favor of smoke-free restaurants, I can tell you that right now. But I'm not in favor of the strong-arm tactics that we're using to get it there. So just some more of the tactics that they used.
And that call, incidentally, not that there's anything illegal about it, but the call came from an Aurora Healthcare line. Dr. Deverman, who was supportive of the ban, was obviously allowing people to use the phones for this calling measure. Let's see, it would have been Wednesday night. Was it Wednesday? I don't remember what night it was, but it was one night last week. I got probably, no, I'm sorry, it was the night before the election, and I got 5 phone calls that night from Aurora. And I just simply wouldn't answer the phone. I saw on caller ID who it was. I thought, oh, after having talked to you and knowing what they... No. They don't even need to... I mean, they ought to know where I stand on this issue anyway, so...
Anyway, back to the
She
can
didn't
board.
call me.
Well, back
Me
to the
neither.
back to the can board thing. I guess, you know, and then I want to get onto this Breathe Free Oshkosh thing a little bit more because of the Margie Davy thing that you had brought up. But as far as the can board goes, now you guys got our letter. You know what we're asking for. How do you feel about that? You've had almost a week now to kind of digest what we had to say in our letter. And for those watching, the letter is posted on our website, ionoshkosh.com. It's right there on the homepage. There's some other things in the community section too that you might want to check out, but this is all right on the homepage. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer. First of all, I certainly agree with going down to the district attorney's office and filing a dispute on the actions that were going on there. It's a no-brainer, Cheryl. I mean, this organization, and I think one thing that needs to be said, I fully support, you know, what the CAN board is actually there to do is to confront addictions. That's fantastic. I mean, who's going to be against that? It's what's happening here and what role they have in the city. You know, in the 4 years I've been on the council, I cannot remember one thing that came up as a recommendation by the CAN board. I've talked to other council members, been there a long, long time. Melanie, you've been there.
Yeah.
Do you ever remember anything coming forward? So
No.
we don't need this.
Of course, I wasn't at some of the meetings. Who knows what they were talking about?
Well, but there
Wasn't
was
paying
nothing ever brought to
attention.
the council dais from them.
Well, no, but
and that's
you know,
what we put in our letter.
But we don't
That
know
was-
what they could have been talking about that wasn't brought up.
Well,
You know.
that's true, but
So I'd heard some rumblings that actually the CAN board folks are going to be, and we're taping this on the 8th, we'll have a council meeting on Tuesday, are going to be coming forward and saying that they want to be separated from the city. So
oh well, then I'm sure the council will go along with it.
I would hope so.
I mean, I think that they should, but if the CAN board was not stepping forward, we'd have a hell of a fight on our
I
hands
think
getting
you'd
the
have a
city
hell
to
of a
strip
fight.
that charter.
Yeah, you would.
You know, your counterparts on this council are so lame. They will just go along. They're being led around by the nose by people who are, you know, in positions of power in this city, and they're still not paying attention to the people and what the people want. When Frank Tower was on the show, you know, I asked him what people should do if they're unhappy. He said, call them. Well, what good does that do? You call them, people can call these councilmen until they're blue in the face. They're not paying any attention. They listen, yeah, oh, thanks for the call, and then they get right up there and they vote completely opposite of what you two guys do.
Yeah.
And we have heard from so many citizens about this very thing. People are getting ticked off. They're beyond ticked off, and they want to come down here and start knocking heads at City Hall.
Yeah. Well, you know, getting back to the election,
I think it spoke volumes.
you know, a loudmouth, egotistical guy like me getting 8,000 votes.
writing that
Yeah,
down.
you can write that down. I did say that.
No.
Give me a tape of this
We
later
got
on.
a tape.
But
Yeah.
Paul, people know what you do. They know that you're trying to work in our best interest, not the best interests of the big developers, not the best interests of, you know, what's going to spend the most money downtown when we don't have any businesses downtown to really benefit. I mean, there's a few anchor businesses down there, and that's it.
I think people just want, from what I've been hearing, you know, and now being on the other side, it's very liberating because people will come up to you and talk to you in a way that they didn't necessarily talk to you before
Right.
as a council member. I think sometimes having that quote unquote leadership role is intimidating, even if you're approachable guys like you are. People are not sure, you know, gee, we don't want any of that retaliation stuff. We don't want anybody getting mad at us, and oh God, they'll know my address. What I'm hearing from people, and I walk into a store and they comment a lot about Paul, a lot, about the fact that you're asking questions, that you will ask questions, you're asking questions that they would ask sitting on the couch in the living room. One thing they say about Frank Tower, he never talks. The
No.
man never talks. How can you go through a 2-year period and not have anything to say? Brian, one of the most controversial terms. I mean, you just said it yourself. Some of the biggest issues. All this learning curve that you've had.
I wish I could acknowledge you three people is unbelievable.
Well, but I mean, and look at the questions that you have felt compelled to ask. I mean, you do a lot of research, Brian, I know, because I could see the papers in front of you and all the stuff that you're doing. Can you imagine sitting an entire term and not asking any questions?
No, I can't say that I can imagine that, no. I mean, you learn a lot, which I have in the first year, and hopefully can bring out what I've learned in the second year of other questions to ask.
Sure.
But it's just with,
But it's a lot
with the
of
dollars
digging.
at hand and everything of that. And I mean, I know with working out of town that I communicate with City Hall pretty much by emails from when we get the packets on Friday until Tuesday mornings of whatever I get. And then if I do have questions, it's haul out the cell phone on my break at work and quick call City Hall to see what I can find out. But some of the things, it's just, there's got to be questions and
Melanie,
stuff.
you know, one of the problem that we have is people running. You don't. There's nobody running really. I mean, of numbers to speak of. You know, I'll say this, Dennis McHugh. If you're watching this, I'm begging, pleading. I'll grovel. I don't know, whatever you want me to do. Please. I mean, if he would run for something like this, Joe Youngworth lost by a very, very small margin. I was hoping to God he would win, and I hope to God he runs next year. I mean, my last name isn't Reagan. It's not Kennedy. It's not Einstein. I mean, I'm not asking all brilliant questions, and I don't have all of the answers, but I think I think what the people want, Melanie, and I think that's why they like you, is just someone up there that I would ask this question sitting on the couch.
And that's actually true, Paul, and that's why this show is so popular with people, because we hear it time and time and time again. We are asking the questions that they would ask if they were sitting here. That's what they tell us.
Right.
But why? Here's the real kicker. And this all bleeds into what we're talking about tonight. We want people to run. We try to encourage our friends. I've been working on Cheryl for as long as I can
So
remember.
has Paul.
So
Yeah, I mean,
also.
I've been working on her to
And other folks
consider
have
it.
too. So, you know.
But here's the question: that why would I run?
That's
The
a great
newspaper
question.
beats the living hell out of you. I mean, it is a thankless job, and I'm not trying to be a whiner because I've been there. But if you're looking at it from the outside in, you're working unbelievable hours. I mean, you work all day, you come home, you answer your phone all night. These are not 5-minute answered questions. It's usually, if you can get off the phone in a half an hour with one problem, you're doing pretty well. Okay? And that's a quickie problem that you can make a call and then you can call them right back. If you can get done in a half an hour, one of those, that's great. And any given night, you can have 25 to 30 phone calls that you've got to return, depending on what issues are cycling in and what's kind of going on. Okay? So, crappy hours, crappy pay, and you get all the disrespect you can handle from the Oshkosh Northwestern, who beats you up at any given at any given turn. You make the paper for not even doing anything wrong. Paul, I understand you're a plaintiff in
A handful of lawsuits.
Because it's titillating to hear that people have a life outside of the council chambers.
Well, they'll print that, but they won't print Kathy Lennon's drunk
DWI.
driving conviction until I let them know about it. So,
Well, and you're right, Melanie. I mean, those are all factors, but and I'm sure Brian's going to agree with this.
You can get more done, though. And I think my point here is that the movers and shakers in this community, and I'm telling anybody who tells me that there's not things that are being run behind the scenes that you council members don't have a clue about, is full of crap. And I think you've all been there long enough to know who the puppeteers are. Those people are smart enough to stay behind the screen, stay below the radar, let you guys take all the heat, and they're talking to community development, the city manager, These guys know how to get it done, and they never have to step foot in the council chambers or put up with any kind of crap at all, and it all gets done their way.
Well, and you know, when guys like me, Brian, Joe Youngworth, people like that are running, those people in the background are scared to death that we get elected. And you know, right now, I mean, Brian and I think recently have voted very similar. That's 2. That's 2 out of 7. They know they're pretty insulated. So, you know, again, Joe Youngworth running next year. I hope to God he gets elected. Dennis McHugh coming forward. That would be fantastic. Cheryl, if you would come forward and run, I mean, at least challenge some of the people up there now.
Well,
so we
and
have
the
some
4-3
choices.
swing goes the other way, and
And they
then,
would be scared to death of
well,
that.
and then
Well, and then maybe some things within City Hall would start changing a
correct.
little bit too.
And I think that's a big problem. That's a big problem.
Going back, because we kind of started out on the can board thing and the Breathe Free Oshkosh thing. Paul, you had brought up about Margie Davy from Breathe Free Oshkosh, and the flyers, the mailers that they had sent out,
Yeah.
and how yes, they had this thing on there saying, "Do you want more smoking in Oshkosh restaurants?" or something to that effect. I've got it in here somewhere, but yeah, it was worded, yeah, do you want more smoking in Oshkosh restaurants? Well, how misleading can
What's
you
this
get?
nonsense?
And then she was quoted in the paper as saying that line was being removed
Right?
when it wasn't removed, and I know that it was a new flyer, a new mail-out piece, because it had the disclaimer on the bottom that they had screwed up on first. They were supposed to be putting a disclaimer on the bottom that they had received an in-kind, donation, I think, from the American Cancer Society, and they got caught there not doing it right. Here again, we've got elected officials, former elected officials, who are screwing up all over the place, and Kathy Propp is one of them, and yet when you ran against her,
Oh yes, this is priceless. You'll
well,
like this.
and you can tell the story in a second, but the bottom line is, I called Margie Davy because it was still there, and she called back and left this snotty little message on my answering machine, and just said something to the effect of, "Well, Cheryl, I guess that just goes to show you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper because even they don't get it right," or some nonsense like that. I called her right back and I left a message. I said, "Well, gosh, I'm so surprised that if this was an error that you didn't call them and ask for a retraction or a correction." I mean, really, and the reason that she didn't, I'm sure, she either said that and then lied to me, or she didn't say it. The Northwestern printed something wrong, and then she's still kind of misleading and a liar and disingenuous because she didn't. If it was an error, she should have called. If you want to run an ethical and a moral campaign and you see something like that, you get it corrected. But of course, why bother correcting it when it works to your advantage and it makes it look to the opposition like, oh boy, what a wonderful, noble group this group, Breathe Free Oshkosh, is. They're playing by all the rules. When they make a mistake, they admit it and they correct it right away. And now they want to fix this because they want everything to be just right. Misleading crap. These people they're out to lunch.
It'd be interesting in the
but
end.
not at restaurants.
It'd be interesting in the end to see how much money was spent.
Yeah.
When you've got the American Cancer Society, American Lung Society, American Heart Association funneling money in there in these flyers, I'm telling you, that's expensive stuff.
Yes.
That's expensive
yeah.
stuff. And the Restaurant Association had some as you wanted some restaurants, they had some flyers up too. But I mean, the discrepancy in the money, I'm sure is going to be very apparent. And they won by 100 votes, basically. 100 votes.
What's going to be interesting is that a lot of these organizations that have worked very hard for the smoking ban are also the very same organizations that come to the restaurateurs and the Tavern League people when they're looking for funds to support their programs. So I'm sure that there's going to be, in discussing with some of these restaurateurs, a change in the financial support that these people get from the restaurateurs and the Tavern League owners and so forth.
There's already some talk about that.
Mel, I want to put one thing in here, and I feel very strongly on this. I want to mention the three people that are on here, and I get as a council member or as a resident, I get requests for money for donations for several different things. There are three that when I get them in the mail, they're going right in a circular file, and they are from the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, and the American Lung Association, who helped funded this garbage. So it's garbage, and
Some of those pictures were unbelievable too.
and unfortunately,
the smoke
I'm
is
gonna
right around just that one table. It's nowhere else
well,
in the
it's
restaurant.
just
If I were
ridiculous.
this woman and her family, her kids, I would have just moved to one of these other tables.
Or I'd
because-
have left the restaurant. I guess would have been another.
One of the things we talked about, Paul, is that you stated that when Cheryl and I's letter came about removing the charter from the can board due to the activities, and the activities that have not been disputed by anyone. These are activities that everyone has readily admitted to.
Because they thought they could do it.
Nobody is disputing any of the information that we have shared or been able to ascertain. How do we know that the CAN board is interested in having the charter removed?
I got a call from, well, when this plays, from former Mayor Hintz. I got a call a few days ago from him, and I believe he was up, I'm sorry, Mr. Kuchera was up by the city attorney asking the process of getting that removed. So I'd heard that. I don't know that for a fact.
But you spoke with Mayor, at this taping, it will be former Mayor Hintz.
That's correct.
Mayor Hintz actually called you at your home and said, this is what's happening. They may be moving forward with the request to remove the charter.
That's correct.
Was that the only thing he called for?
No, he called me about another issue, and I am at a loss for what it is. I don't remember what it was right now.
Brian, did you receive a call from Mayor Hintz about the charter?
I am surprised because since when Cheryl called me last Friday night and read the email that she sent to me that everybody got, and then plus one of the charter being removed and everything, I expected, as I told her the other night, either to get some emails from other people about that or phone calls, and I to this day have not had a one from anyone as being a new councilman and readily in saying what I did say about when I was asked to be on the board. And the way you had worded it, I expected emails and phone calls and never heard of one.
I've actually not heard from any councilman. I mean, we've talked about it, the three of us, the four of us, and I did get an email from Deputy Mayor Mark Harris saying that the CAN board may want to remove the charter also. But
Now
I've
wait,
not heard.
we need to stop right
Okay.
there for just a moment.
Okay.
Brian, you know where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Esslinger, Councilmember Esslinger hears from the mayor that CAN may be considering dropping the charter. Did you hear from the mayor? You have not.
I have not.
No phone call.
I've not spoken to any councilman
so you
except
have not.
for
But-
election night with talking to Paul.
We get an email from Deputy Mayor Harris stating that CAN may be considering removing the charter.
Or that they might like to, or something to that effect.
Well, what I'm interested in finding out is, what was the chain of events that the mayor created with this phone call? Because as council members,
violation of an open meetings
you
law.
cannot have those conversations.
Walking quorum.
Walking quorum.
Mm-hmm.
If he talked to 3 council
If
members.
you talk to 3. And that's why it would be interesting to see if there was any written communication. If there was written, I would presume, Brian, you would have gotten that.
I would think so.
If there was telephone calls.
But wait a minute. I always took it, and you know, maybe this is something to take up with our city attorney Warren Kraft. I was always under the impression that a walking quorum is where someone calls you, you in turn call someone else, they in turn call someone else, and before you know it, you've got yourselves where everybody has somehow
Knows
been
what's going on.
contacted. I wasn't under the impression that it had to be multiple phone calls from the same person.
Well, the point is that you cannot try to garner support
Right.
via phone calls
Right. So
to
maybe the
multiple
call
members.
shouldn't have been made, period.
Correct. And that is the point. If you believe that there is a potential that something will come to the council floor for a vote,
Yep.
there is not to be a discussion between more than 2 of you. Paul and I could have a conversation about something, but Paul cannot then go to another council member, to Brian, to whomever. I cannot go to Brian.
Were
or
you asked
whomever.
not to go to another council member? Did Mayor Hintz ask that of you?
No. But in his defense, he knows that I know that I can't do that.
And you would think that he would know it as well. So I'm just asking the question because I find it kind of interesting because these things are all swirling, and you can understand how people become jaded.
Well,
seeing
I had
how-
also find it kind of more interesting than you that as the reason I came here to discuss this was the representative city council on the CAN board, and if you got a call from Mayor Hintz about the situation, and you got the email from Mark Harris,
But nobody
where
can
am I as the CAN board representative from the city council to know what's going on?
You didn't go to the meetings anyway.
I know, I'm just
Sitting on
saying
your
though.
can on the
I just-
sidelines.
That's right, sitting on the can on the sidelines.
Here's the other thing I want to ask real quickly. Has anybody heard from Don Kuchera as kind of the guy who's gone to supposedly, and I'm prefacing this with supposedly gone to the attorney's office and said, how do we remove the charter? Has anybody gotten an apology from anybody on the CAN board? Dawn Lux came forward in the Northwestern and said, gee, we're real sorry, but we didn't know what the open meetings laws
We're not quite up to speed on
we
open
weren't up
meetings,
to speed.
please.
Which, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm not buying that, because I know the time Lynn and Warren in our attorney's office spend educating people at these open meetings. I mean, I've been on every board I think that there is. I didn't attend everything, but I've been on every board. So I know the due diligence that they do. But while we're busy scurrying around to get our butts out of a jam, our can out of a jam, nobody has taken the time to call and say, you know, we apologize for embarrassing the city of Oshkosh.
Embarrassing? They're disgusted with us, Melanie. I'm going to get a phone call saying they're embarrassed. One thing, you've got the chairperson saying he's disgusted with us. Come on.
But none of that has happened.
No.
Isn't that interesting? Couple of real quick things, because we're down to about 8.5, 9 minutes here. I got some phone calls. Well, one was a email. Somebody is very upset still about these rocks that were placed along the shoreline out by Lakeshore Golf Course. One of the emails came from a gentleman who's disabled. And once in a while he likes to go down there and fish, and he's having a heck of a time doing that because he can't walk.
Yeah.
Why were the rocks placed there?
I got some varying reasons why. I got the reason that there was litter there, and it was thought that the fishermen were creating the litter, when I don't believe that's a fact. I think there's kids going down there in the evening hours and drinking.
Put a garbage can down there, not rocks.
Whatever. And and then I heard that the vehicles that were traveling off of that road were creating ruts there, and it looked bad going into the golf course, so they wanted to put the rocks there so the people couldn't. But I think they've gotten the message now. I know some of the rocks have been removed. It's a work in progress. They're going to be planting some trees there, and putting some grass there. So, I guess one thing that could be looked at is having at least 1 or 2 stalls for handicap access.
Could you look into that?
Sure.
Because this guy, he's having a rough time
As
with it.
we know, being townies, towny, okay? That is one of the few places that the blue collars, the working guy, is ever going to get to use waterfront property. That besides the cemetery, and let's face it, not a lot of us, there's people that will fish out of the cemetery, there's good fishing, but it's a beautiful area, and why make it difficult for people to have access to that water area to fish?
I don't know.
So you throw big boulders up there and say, yeah, well, okay, we realize that this is a municipal park area, but we only want golfers in here. This is just, this is not well thought out stuff. We gotta stop doing dumb things like this. The cost of putting it in and then taking it out because somebody just didn't ask.
Yeah. One thing, if we can go back briefly on the smoking thing, that I really want to get across is, as the socialism is creeping into Oshkosh now, and socialism is the government taking control, basically. I think one thing that needs to be said is, now that the restaurants are under the thumb, you folks that own the taverns, the crosshairs are on your back now.
Oh, amen.
And you folks sitting at home with the cigarette in your mouth, you're on deck. One has been down, one's down, we're on to the next one, and we're on to the next one. So,
although Dr. Deverman said our work here is done.
Really?
Well,
but I remember Kathy Propp being on your show saying, and having discussions saying, we know politically that we can get the restaurants, and we would love to have the rest of them.
I think President Bush said the war's over in Iraq, too. Have you heard that? Yeah. I don't think so. No, I'm not going there.
Well, and an update, again, we're taping on April 8th. I still have not heard from Mr. Underheim, whether he wants to come forward and talk to the folks about what he's doing down there. So, again, he's hiding under his desk.
Well, we'll hear what he has to say when it's coming time for him to run. I realize that we just finished with one election, but November is not that far away.
Maybe we need to have, the Republicans had contract with America, and now we have voters' right. What was the Wisconsin?
Tobar?
Yeah, whatever. Maybe we should have a voters of Oshkosh rights that have their representative actually coming to a council meeting. I know this is a stretch. Actually coming to a council meeting on occasion and talking about what happens at the state affects the city of Oshkosh. And maybe they can all sign off on that.
Two other things real quickly, since you have not heard from Underheim or Carol Owens. Have you gotten anything? I know when you were on the last time you had asked, or you had mentioned that you had talked to the city manager about getting some minutes and so forth from OCDC. Have you gotten any of that yet?
No, I haven't. But
So we still don't know what
no.
in the world this group is doing
I don't
you
have
know
a
how
clue.
they're helping to promote the city
don't have a
for
clue.
business. Okay. Well, Rob Clayman, I don't know what he's doing. Also, one other thing real quickly. Got a phone call about an hour before I came over here tonight. There is a woman in town. She doesn't watch the show because she doesn't have cable, and she doesn't see our website because she doesn't have access to the internet. But she stays really on top of a lot of this city stuff. And she said that as far as she can figure, there are a lot of city boards and commissions that have people sitting on these things who have moved out of the city and are no longer city residents, but still serving on these boards. And yet at the same time, she has tried to get on a board for years and can't.
Really?
And so she does not feel that's fair. And I don't know, maybe you could look into that, because there are one or two boards that are exempt from that residency requirement,
Library
right?
board and actually the CAN board was exempt from that.
Okay. Well,
I think, in light of what's going on here, maybe I can even mention at council member statements at the next meeting that the Mr. Walling's assistant, Jackie Chalice, pull out the files on everyone that's on those meetings, cross-reference it with where they live, and make sure that everyone's above board here.
Do I have time real quick?
sure.
Very quickly, in the paper recently, we're hearing again that the Convention and Visitors Bureau, in light of everything else that's going on in some of the other boards, Convention and Visitors Bureau doesn't want to have open meetings because, gee whiz, we have to discuss some sometimes pretty unpleasant stuff. Gentlemen, please tell me that you are not going to let them walk away without being able to have open meetings. While they are a private board, they still receive public money, and their doings with that money is our business. Do you agree, disagree, quickly?
Absolutely. And do you know, well, the
100%.
Convention and Visitors Bureau we fund through hotel motel tax.
Yes.
The Grand Opera House has private meetings, and they get money from hotel motel room tax and from the general
Right.
fund. So, again, their contract is coming up this year. I'm
The
saying
foundation?
yes.
Okay, because I was
I'm-
going to say the Grand Opera House Board is an open meeting city board,
But-
but the foundation board is what you're talking about.
Right, but
Right.
what I'm saying
Okay.
is the city one. I don't know if they have any private meetings or not, but if they do, that needs to go.
Oh, and as
You
far
agree?
as for the Convention Visitors Bureau, the word Oshkosh behind that, still no open meetings.
Now,
Okay.
but-
We don't have time.
okay.
Sorry.
Darn it, we
all I
should've
would
started
say is,
sooner.
you guys, when you're on committees and boards, go, because that's why you're sitting on there, and don't let the mayor tell you not to, whoever the mayor might be. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to you guys both
Thanks,
for being
guys.
here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
A couple days after the election and a big night. And thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. In the meantime, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.